Well, hello everyone. Today is part 3 of a 3-part series that we're doing on how you can help your teenager with anxiety, specifically related to their academics and how they're doing in school. And in today's episode, we're going to be talking about empowerment and some of the things you can do to empower your teenager to help to overcome this anxiety. So let's get started. Well, hello again, everyone. My name is Jim White, and I'm an author, coach, and the founder of the Family Enrichment Academy. And today we're going to be talking about empowerment and how you can help your child overcome anxiety around academics and schoolwork. And this, again, is the third part of a 3-part series we're doing on this particular topic. Now, before we dive in, though, I just wanted to encourage you to stick around to the end. I've got a free resource for you. It's 10 questions you should never ask your teenager. And at the end of the video, I'll share a little bit more information about this and how you can get this free resource. So make sure you stick around for that. So anyway, back to our topic. And so the first 2 parts of this series, we first talked about just your mindset and where you were coming from and just making sure you were in a good place as the parent, that you were staying grounded in love. So you were in a position to be able to serve, connect, and empower your teenager. And then in the second video, we talked about building connection, and this was really during that when your teenager was experiencing that overwhelm. How can you build connection? We talked a lot about just inquiring about what's going on for them and then acknowledge and validating what they're experiencing during that time. And the whole purpose there was to provide a safe place for that negative energy and the anxiety to start to dissipate a little bit. So that was around building connection. So today we're going to jump into the idea of empowerment, which is more of a discussion of, okay, how can you help your teenager or arm them so that they can help to, be able to overcome or maybe even be able to avoid some of this anxiety going forward. So let's take a look at some strategies there. Now, the first place I would start, just keep in mind that the intention here is you do this when the teenager is back into a calm place. So in other words, if they're overwhelmed with anxiety, this is not a time to start to have these empowerment-based conversations. These conversations happen when the teenager's back settled, they're in a calm place, and they're ready to sort of explore what they can do different the next time. So that's the first thing to keep in mind here. So as part of this process, where I would invite you to start is back in the idea of awareness and helping your teen to create some awareness of what it's like when they start to feel anxious and what brings that on. And you can do that by kind of revisiting what they went through. Where before when we talked about building connection, it was what are you experiencing or what is going on for you right now. You ask those questions to start to get a sense of what they were experiencing. Now, if it's in the past, you can say, well, what was it like or what were you experiencing? So you can see how we're just sort of putting them back so that they can create some awareness of what it's like when they start to feel anxious or have that anxiety pop up. And then I would share with the teen that this is all about creating awareness, being able to start to notice and maybe be able to catch yourself when you're starting to feel this way. So that would be the first step is to revisit. And again, your job is to ask the questions. What were you experiencing? What was it like? What did you notice when this was going on? So you ask those questions to help the teenager become more aware of what they were going through. And then I think the next thing you can do is share the idea that this is somewhat normal. I mean, everybody experiences anxiety, whether it's with doing something new for the first time, or it's like with the academics, it's taking a test and you're worried about how you're going to do on the test. I mean, everybody experiences that sort of nervousness or anxiety around those situations. So you can normalize it a little bit around that as well. And then the next place I would encourage you to think about from an empowerment standpoint is to then ask the teen, well, what strategies or what kinds of things could you do when you start to feel anxiety coming on to help to calm yourself down or get yourself back into a calm state? Leave it as an open-ended question, and you're leaving that for the teen to answer for themselves. Now, one thing I will point out here too, part of the empowerment process, and we talk about the distinction between control versus empowerment. We want to let go of our need to control what's going on with the teen and empower them to be able to solve their own problems. And I'll introduce here, there's also this idea of rescue. You can either rescue the teen or you can help the teen build resiliency or resourcefulness. And again, part of what we're after is we want to help that teen to be resilient and be able to be resourceful to solve their own problems. And we do that by not rescuing them. So that's what I'm saying here, have them try to come up with some ideas about what could they do if they start to experience some anxiety. And 9 times out of 10, they may say, well, I don't know what I would do. Again, our goal is to help them to be resourceful. So what you could do is say, well, where could you go look for some information or maybe get some ideas? Let them come up with some ideas. Maybe they do a little research on the internet, go to a YouTube video, something that would help them to discover maybe some ideas or some solutions for how to, some strategies for overcoming anxiety. You see how we're helping them to become resourceful and solve their own problems by doing that. Now, you could also interject some of your ideas, but again, part of this, and one of the things I like to encourage parents to do when you're in this coaching mode, is to ask permission to share some of your thoughts. And so you could say to the teen, if they're struggling coming up with some ideas, well, would it be okay if I shared a few thoughts on what I do when I start to feel anxious? They're probably going to say yes. And so you could say, well, I like to take deep breaths, or maybe you take a break and go take a walk, do something physical. Whatever it is that you do to help you to sort of release that negative energy or that negative, that overwhelming energy from anxiety. You could share that with the teen. But again, you could direct them to resources as well and have them explore it a little bit. And then you circle back and say, well, what did you learn? What did you find? And maybe they have 10 different things that they found. And you say, well, which one do you think would work best for you? So again, you're coaching them, you're helping them to solve their own problem. So that's the kind of the first place is, what do we do if we start to feel anxious or that anxiety coming on? And then maybe let's say that this whole scenario, the example of like taking a test is one where it brings up that anxiety. If the teen has a test next week and they've come up with a few of these strategies and you've said, what will work best for you? And they say, oh, I think I'll take some deep breaths, for example, before I walk into the test. When they take that test next week, circle back to them and say, how did it work? Were you able to do it? Did it help you? Did you feel better? Again, this is a journey for everybody, right? And they're not going to solve it maybe immediately. It's about supporting them as they move along their journey and learning to deal with these kind of situations. And again, I'll circle back to that whole idea. We're helping them to build resiliency and resourcefulness. We want them they have to go through it in order to develop that resiliency and to see that they can, in fact, get through it. So circle back to that and ask those questions, again, in that coaching role. And then another thing you could do, which is sort of the third point around empowerment, is let's use the example of the test taking. Maybe there's anxiety every time they take a test. Start to introduce the idea of reframing. How else could you look at this? Is there a different way you could look at your test taking? Could you come from a different perspective that in effect starts to alleviate the anxiety? It's like you never get to that anxious place because you're looking at it differently. That anxiety doesn't come up because of a different perspective. And you could just introduce and start to ask those questions and have the teen think a little bit about it. How else could they look at the process of studying and taking a test, for example? Again, that's sort of the ultimate goal, is to get them to the point to where they don't even start to experience the anxiety. That would be ultimately what we'd like to get them to. So anyway, those are just some ideas around empowerment. That's the idea of empowerment. And again, one of the key things is we don't do this when they're overwhelmed with the anxiety. When they're overwhelmed, remember, step back to that second step, which is building connection and being that safe place for all that negative energy to dissipate. Once that's dissipated, then we can move into this coaching and empowerment mode and help to develop strategies for moving forward to where they either are able to deal with or sort of bring themselves back if they start to feel anxious, or they don't develop the anxiety in the first place. So Anyway, hopefully that's gives you some strategies or some ideas. Jump down in the comments. I'd love to hear from you. If there's some things that you've done that have really worked with your teen, share them with the community. I mean, part of our goal here at the Family Enrichment Academy is just to develop a community of parents that are just like you. We're all going through a lot of the same things, where we can engage and work together and have a sense of, again, community to be able to work with each other. So jump down there, connect with the community. That would be an awesome thing for you to do and for your family. So anyway, circle back. I did mention I've got that free resource for you. It's 10 questions you should never ask your teenager. Think of these as like conversation killers. One of the biggest concerns I get from parents is this idea that I feel disconnected or like my teen won't talk to me anymore. So these questions are intended to help you to recognize things that maybe you should avoid. And then I've also got 10 great questions. These are the questions that are conversation starters that will get your teen to open up a little bit. So there's a link down below. You can click that link and you'll go to the website, and then you can download that resource. And I'd love for you to have it, and again, check it out. You might be surprised. You start to incorporate some of these strategies, you'll start to see that teen open up in a relatively short amount of time. So check that out. That's there for you as well. Once again, it's just truly an honor and a privilege to be able to serve you as you move along your parenting journey. And I just will remind you that it is a journey. Every day we're growing and learning and becoming better at what we do. And every day you're going to be faced with new obstacles and issues as well. And that's why I just like to encourage people to keep that growth mindset and just be willing to look at new ways to handle situations and ways that you can grow and learn and develop as a parent as well. So just keep that perspective in mind. I love having you here and as a part of the community. So anyway, hopefully you found some value in this 3-part series. And actually, we're going to do another one, and this one's going to be more on social anxiety. We've been talking about academics, but we'll maybe focus a little bit in on the social anxiety, dealing with friends, that sort of thing as well. So check that one out also. Once again, it is truly an honor and a privilege to serve you as you move along your parenting journey. And remember, until next time, a change in perspective changes everything.